You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Shane.
I'm Dave.
And I'm Liam.
And we have a few things to discuss today. I think one of them will be cons are back a little bit.
Whoop.
Whoa.
Conventions have been a bit thin on the ground in the post-COVID world, but we've finally gone about a year since they've been back, and I think we can say they're pretty much back full swing. Vaticon seems to have had a successful run of it. Maybe a little scatterbrained in a few things as new crowd who've gone 3 years without
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have
it.
there's certainly alumni and people who run stuff who can be hit up for knowledge, but in general, you're gonna have teething problems if you got a fairly green crew. But
Yeah,
just
and a
I
lot of
haven't
the
heard any bad reports really, so it seems they've done pretty well.
And I personally went to Leprechaun, which was the first main con back last year, and it's now seems to be settling in to the thing, and they seem to have a decent crowd.
Yeah, I was actually when I arrived, I was just there on Saturday morning, and it seemed to be pretty quiet. But I think then once the war games and a few other events that were running in the hall kicked off, the place livened up quite a lot.
Yeah, it seemed to go well. People were around, games ran, people seem to be having fun. So
I also managed to clear out some of my old board games. They had a bring and buy stand, so
yeah,
I flogged off some of my games and gave it to a charity. So
Good
it's
for
grand.
you. Good
Made
man.
some room. There's more room to go. So watch this space.
yeah. So expecting lots of board game reviews in the future. But yeah,
No, it's the opposite. I'm flogging them. So I guess I could review them and then flog it. If you went to buy this one,
this game's middling. You should definitely buy it though.
yeah. But yes, it is good to see the conventions are back. I still think that WarpCon's been the biggest I've seen been back since, but it does have its natural advantages of being at Cork and having a captive audience.
I know, certainly when I was in DCU, the advantage of Cork was that it was usually straight after the exams, except for the odd year when it was on the week of the exams, in which case nobody went.
Yeah. It is heartening to see that that old things are coming back. I'm not sure there's anything scheduled for the summer. I don't think
Well,
any.
there's QCon, which I guess, I mean, people would call it an anime con with some gaming attached, which is fairly apt. But usually we're quarantined in our own separate little hall where we can do our role playing and stuff without interacting with the rest of the con, which works just fine. I may head up to that one myself because my partner and stepson enjoy anime and a bit of cosplay, so it could be a good family event.
Yeah, sounds very possible. I'm still holding out that some mad person will revive HoboCon, but may just have a.
I think you need to get people who are involved in running it to make a very drunken promise and then hold them to it. I think that's basically how you got to get it to run.
Yeah, I suppose that is true. All right.
All right, kick into the main topic of the day.
Yes.
There is actually a main topic.
Technically. So this is sort of we've had a few episodes over the last few months about the social niceties of being a heavily armed murder entrepreneur, your average RPG, and how sometimes the nuances of social norms might escape a otherwise rational human being when suddenly they are role playing as Thorgar the Mighty. but there was one particular one that I don't think we covered specifically, and that is the subtle art of disarmament, or knowing what weapons to bring in what social situations. And it's it's one of those sort of classic behaviors. The whole so like first off, you get your fancy ball. This is your classic example. Your fancy ball. You've been invited to the Duke's fancy ball, and the players begrudgingly spend 0.2% of their ill-gotten gains buying soap and
Accoutrements.
buying suits or whatever the local fashion is, fancy dress and all that, and
Not,
then
not,
they're going to
Must spend
spend
100 GP on jewelry.
yeah. Or all of a sudden this is the only context which they care exactly how many earrings and fancy bracelets they have, and
We'll ignore the absurdity of the fact that my 2000 GP ring doesn't count towards that 100 GP limit.
because it's magical and therefore it's cheating. But they do all this, and then you get the argument where people are trying to figure out how, in this wonderful strapless ball gown made of sequins and spider silk or whatever, how in this getup are they going to store their +7 broadsword of flaming doom, or
That
their
came up in the
their
first.
crossbow?
That came up in the first Wonder Woman movie, didn't it? People were speculating she was holding between her butt cheeks.
Yeah, that did happen. I think we yeah.
It was a fancy, nice little hold the dress together, thing, and that's how it was got away with. And then you're like, yeah, the length of that sword, it is literally, between the crack of her butt.
oh,
But,
jeez.
Yeah. I mean, nice party trick if you could do it, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, like some like I'd argue that games that have more detailed equipment rules are there's a bit more scope for gear that's intended for moving into social situations. Like I suppose the example that comes to mind for me is Dark Heresy First Ed, where given the game's emphasis on investigations and skullduggery, and like there are assassins knock you around, including as player characters. So you have things like blades concealed in canes, or laser weapons that fit into the palm of your hand, or um, hairpins that turn out to be telekinetically moved weaponry.
Yeah, that was a nice one. I remember in the novels. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That kind of cool spy gear. Sort of deal up. That could be really cool if your system is set up to do it. Like I'm sure there's many in espionage RPG which has lovely lists of things, and equipment point budgets, and how angry you make Q if you if you talk with them, or lose it down someone's throat or whatever.
well,
Yeah, that's kind of
other ways out of it are also like glamour. Most
Hmm.
versions of fantasy gaming have some form of glamour, be it as a permanent enchantment or be it as a one-time spell that's cast for a certain duration. That can be a way around getting around chunky armor. But there's also the role-playing version of it. That's part of my uniform. You know, people going in, and certainly may not have a full plate, but you might get away with a breastplate if you're I'm in an ugly order. So this breastplate and cuirass is absolutely part of my getup. Might even explain away a rapier or a cutlass or something. Saber would probably be more in keeping with. I'm a dashing cavalry officer.
that's I think is interesting. way to do it, and it's mainly because it involves actually engaging with the social order of appropriateness, like actually going into the culture and saying, well, I have X position, I have X rank, and we're in culture Y, so I could get away with this level weaponry without wrong suspicion, or or maybe like they'll detect magic weapons, but they are wizards, so they don't think that normal weapons are a big deal. So I might get away with my sword, um, or the opposite.
They'll detect the metal, so I'll have to get a weapon made of hardwood.
Yeah,
Or ceramics in a sci-fi setting.
yeah, that's another option. Yeah, so
Be like, what's the name of that Clint Eastwood movie? John Malkovich.
the one with the bones one, the bone gun.
Oh,
It's
existence.
he's assassinating the president in the line of fire. Is it?
Oh, no, like there was. I think I'm trying to think of the name of the film, but there was one where there was a gun smuggled into a dinner event, and it was basically a cooked. It looked like a cooked fish. So you assembled it from the bones, and were using like fish teeth as the bullets. Like it
Is that
was.
Yeah.
not Existence?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, that'd be a little more, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess with a sufficiently advanced sci-fi, you could probably have that, like, or something
Especially about sci-fi, you could have all sorts of wacky stuff.
like I'm thinking Blade Runner-esque, where there's clearly a lot of gene editing and manipulation going on.
I
Mm.
mean,
You could,
like
yeah,
again, this is sort of engaging with preparation and assassination attempts and sneaking weapons past guards to pull out a, uh, a heist or an assassination and the most high security of stakes. That's neat. That's sort of engaging thing.
yeah.
I'm more talking about the
How to get the players to that point where they've accepted getting rid of all their gear, so they have to resort to all this stuff.
there's a bit of that. Yeah, it's just like engaging with social niceties, or I think, but like there is something in a certain player's mindset that the very idea that they may not have all the weapons, they may only have some of the weapons, they only have their socially acceptable dagger, that really turns on paranoia.
Yeah.
And how do we overcome the barrier of out of character paranoia to get to the no, they're not even going to let you into this party if you have so much as a sharp knitting needle.
I
Yeah.
think it's difficult because so much of gaming and just storytelling in general, it's filled with, okay, you go ahead and you do your disarmament, and even if the hosts don't have nefarious plans, it doesn't mean that a dragon isn't going to kick in the wall and suddenly you're in the middle of feast and there's no weapons to hand. Now, it could well be that the first thing that happens is the dragon turns up and weapons a bunch of guards, and oh look, there's a pile of weapons, and you can dive on them. But yeah, players don't like the idea that they're leaving themselves defenseless.
Yeah, they really don't. It does it could be a good opportunity for some character classes to shine, like say a monk or some other martial artist type, where or an improvised weapon expert, as in this chair is now as deadly as anything I could have brought in.
I have +7 my Jackie Chan skill.
Yeah, I mean, if you're disarming the whole party, do you put the party into one of the Hannibal Lecter yokes, straight jacket, and
Uh,
muzzle
uh,
covering them up? Because that's about the only way you disarm a monk.
yeah, well, most parties don't misbehave that badly, at least to begin with.
Yeah, but
I mean,
yeah,
one of the best things a wizard should do if they have issue materials is carry around a bag of spell components. People
Oh
assume you
yeah.
take the spell component pouch off and they're useless, and really the spell component pouch does nothing.
Oh, I've played a sorcerer who had a spell component pouch before, like for that reason.
Yeah, but like again, if you're disarming, and this is kind of a disparity between the classes because, like, okay, you disarm the fighter, we're taking away all their weapons. What you do to the wizard? Nothing. There's nothing he can do.
Um,
Tie
and
their hands behind their back.
and honestly, even that fighter should still be dangerous enough. They should be, like it'd be a good opportunity for them to get creative. As in, if I need a weapon, what can I do? Like, is there a guard there I could snag a weapon from if I have to? Could I get the sneaky guy to pass me a weapon, under the table? Like, get clever.
Yeah, these are. I mean, that's. There's sort of like I guess a context where this kind of planning is good, but the problem is that it's the default approach to a lot of people might give to a thing where, like, literally, like, at what point is a GM okay to say, guys, there's literally going to be no combat in this scene. This is literally you hobnobbing with nobles and learning the factions in the town. There's not going to be a random encounter. Please, you don't need any weapons. Like, at what point does should a GM actually sort of break immersion and go, please stop this? We've been the last 30 minutes planning how we're going to sneak in stilettos in our bustiers. This is a waste of time and is actually making you look like psychopaths.
I think one of the ways is to outline the consequences and to reinforce the consequences. Like, there will be security checks, and if at any point during the night if you're caught on the way in, or at any point during the night you're caught with these weapons, there will be severe repercussions. And that could be social repercussions, or could be all the guys jumping on you and doffing your head in.
I'd also make the point that if GM and players are enjoying the planning, and some parties absolutely thrive on that stuff, that's not a wasted half hour. That's even if you're just exploring possibilities. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a bad use of game time.
It's going to very much depend on the consequence and like how a GM feels about suddenly lose control of pacing and the dramatic weight of a scene where they were hoping to just fade to black and you're all in your fancy rented ball gowns, hobnobbing with all the social pillars of the kingdom, but all of a sudden it's just like, all right, so we're going to sneak in the poison and just enough explosives to take out one of the pillars. We need to collapse the roof, and they're just like, wait, okay, where did this mindset come from? This is meant to be set up for future things, and we're turning it into an assassination attempt in all but name. And like at what point does a GM allowed is the wrong word, but like, when does it become appropriate to hold up his hands saying, like, we could just not go through this process and the effect will be smoother if we just assume that you're okay.
I guess, do you need to do things to put the party at ease in advance of it? Like, have them interact with some of the guards and let them know that the guards are honest, and that they're like the head of the guard. They can read like a book, and they can see he doesn't have any kind of ill intent, and he should be in the know if this was just a ploy to lure them in.
Yeah, there's a bunch of like historical contexts, and not to mention fictional contexts, where the host's honor is at risk if anything happens to their guests, like Breton law, like in Ireland.
Yeah.
So you're basically the host of the event it's at least some scenarios putting their own like reputation on the line if anything happens to their guests, if they allow anything to happen to their guests, let alone backstab them.
That would apply even if a third party were to interfere.
Yeah, it depends on the context, but yeah, I mean, sure, like, I don't think it's much of a spoiler to refer to the red wedding in games.
Yeah, I think part of the issue, and this is maybe more in our fictional tropes, is that there's a lot more easy to remember examples of cool party scenes in fiction going badly for the unprepared than there are examples of where no this party is just hobnobbing. It's just people sniping at each other and being catty and making secret alliances in the back rooms.
I mean, like, unless you're reading Jane Austen, like, they don't come up, like, as the nature of storytelling, particularly like fantasy and epic storytelling, is that you only see the events where the skullduggery and stuff happens. So therefore, that's what kind of gets reinforced in your head. Like, if every episode of your show had a feast and nothing happened, nobody would watch that show.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, that's fair. There is
And I
also,
guess the assumption then is that players are going to a feast, so they assume that, oh, well, something nefarious is going to happen here.
I do think there is sort of a thing about appropriateness, though. Like, as I say, if you have the right social context, then yeah, it is entirely possible to bring, say, a rapier to an event or social gathering, and the question is, like, okay, first off, I think an awful lot of these kinds of situations happen when when a GM not thinking something through might simply spring something on the party, and because it's come out of nowhere, and like if you're if you've been highlighting the upcoming spring ball for like 3 sessions, the players have probably already been thinking in the back of their mind, oh, I should do this, maybe take this extremely subtle weapon or try this interesting magic that won't trigger any alarms, and that then the whole thing will go a lot smoother. Whereas I suspect a lot of GMs just go, well, the module says there's a party happening now, so I guess you have 20 minutes to get the right clothes, and then the party happens, and then the players go into, the dragon is coming. There'll be a dragon in the thing. We need our +7 broadswords and our chainsaw guns. So there's the in-game social context where you have to engage with what is appropriate for the setting, and then there's probably a bit of a at the table social context where you should probably communicate as well as possible to your players how much they should be worrying about their having, whether they have to fight with the butter knives or the dessert spoons versus Tiamat coming through the door.
So should you be feeding rumors and stuff in advance then? Ooh, a black dragon was sighted,
That does
100
reward
leagues north
party
of the city, or
research. Like, because there could be a very big difference in the party just blundering into a situation where they don't know the players, they don't know the situation, versus, okay, we've tapped our contacts, we've installed listening devices, or scryed, or gotten the inside info, and those experiences could be very different.
Yeah, like as I said, like if this is actually interesting planning and interesting preparation, and they're actually like researching what is an appropriate gear to bring, what magics will they detect, or what super science nano machine weapons can we get off our dealer. If they actually are doing proper research and planning for this, to create something appropriate, that's cool, that's engaging, as you say, but it's the I worry that after our usual thing of talk to the players, I wonder if we're developing another sub thing, is like, don't surprise the players with something they're not expecting and trigger their panic buttons.
I mean, surprise is one thing, but I guess, yeah, setting up one set of. I think you're setting up one contract and then pulling it out and ripping it up and throwing a different contract at them. I guess by having the, okay, turn up, get disarmed, and then boom, you actually need your stuff. And that's what players think, even though that is not your intention at all. I think that's what players are expecting.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I
like-
don't know.
like so, like some as we've touched on, players can get very attached to their equipment. Like we've touched on the answer is not on your character sheet, or the answer is on your character sheet in previous episodes. And depending on the game, the gear might be the distinguishing factor for a lot of characters.
Oh, and it's also that like we haven't even mentioned the monetary value of a lot of this stuff.
Oh yeah,
Like, if you take a high level adventurer in D&D, their gear could literally purchase a kingdom, a small
Yeah.
kingdom. Like, and
Well,
the fact
there's
that fifth ed, you can't even buy the stuff.
Well, there's a bit in Lord of the Rings where weapons of legend are being placed aside because the party needs to get in to have a chat. Like, so you know what? If Aragorn can do it, so can the players, I think.
I think there's also when you have a +7 flaming broadsword worth 200,000 gold pieces. You all, as well as the worry that the dragon's going to come through the back door and steal all the cocktails. I think there may also be a worry that they may have to the party may start exploding at some point and they need to flee, and they've left their +7 broadsword of flaming doom in the cloakroom, and then all of a sudden, no, the consequences of the party are not the death of the king and the scattering of the nobility across the 17 portals of Doom. It's we need to get back to that cloakroom and find my sword. And
I mean, the ability can be replaced. I mean, it's replaced every time a noble dies. Another one is just instantly straight a noble, assuming that it's a hereditary title. Like, that
yeah.
+7 broadsword ain't getting replaced.
But like we've been very much focusing on the situation of the classic the party, where social nicety and decorum is sort of a focused thing. But like the same is true if you're like just visiting the king and making a request, or you maybe certain wizards you have to think about. Well, I probably should not bring cold iron into the Fey wizards place. There's those kinds of social context, but there's also like it's actually not that common in fiction for people to be able to walk around a town or city with full plate and a broadsword on their back and not get funny looks. Like being armed.
There's not that many open carry kingdoms in fantasy.
Yeah.
Well, certainly not in history. Like if you were bringing out a weapon, it was generally in most social situations. It obviously depended. If your kingdom was at war, then people would just like, I guess he's part of the war. But a lot of times, if assuming your kingdom was at peace or relative peace, so like people who are not the nobility or hired by the nobility or the cities were not supposed to have these kinds of weapons, or if they did, where they were supposed to be in your house in your lockup waiting for when the king's going to muster and call you to assemble the militia. But because we sort of have this bit more of a Wild West style thought about we're on the frontier. That's sort of the classic D&D mentality, and that sort of poisoned a lot of other fantasy games as we've gone, and some sci-fi games as well. People don't think about, well, is it appropriate for me to have my gear? That's something. It's just like it's part of the character sheet. It's part of how I do things. Obviously, it's appropriate, and it's just like.
Well, even in the Wild West, it was common enough for towns to have no firearms.
Yeah.
That the first thing you do, you walk right up to the sheriff and you hand your weapons in, and then you get a receipt, and then when you're leaving town, you pick them up. If you ever go to Dodge City in Deadlands, guess what? You're giving up your guns, or else you're dealing with the sheriff.
I do love the idea that I think someone quoted this online. It's just like the classic city of Tombstone, where the OK Corral fight happened, had stronger gun control laws back at the time of the OK Corral fight than it does today. It's just like, but yeah, it's just like people. We've sort of gotten to a habit of treating, the dire combat situation of when you're in a dungeon or in a spy battle with your cars, or when you're hand soldering around in a seedy bar on the far side of Omnicon Delta. We sort of go to that mindset. Well, it's appropriate for me to be heavily armed, but that these are sort of more extreme examples, and that social contexts of sort of lawlessness do not always apply. And people, I mean, you could, like, if you wanted to highlight this, if you wanted to make this a theme, you could very much do a situation where when the players are in their hometowns being assaulted by goblins, yeah, people aren't walk around with their with swords on the belts all the time, but then they go to the fancy walled city and they're just getting gawked at by everyone. It's just like, why are you wearing armor? Why do you have 3 crossbows loaded at all times? What's wrong with you? That's a thing you can do, but again, it's sort of one of those things that requires thought by both players and GMs to really make it work.
Yeah, well, it
You just
requires some investment and engagement with the world as well. I mean, if it's just generic fantasy world where the NPCs are very obviously just not caring what the PCs do, it's not going to fly. But in even a vaguely realistic setting, if somebody's wearing full military grade weaponry wandering on the street, people are going to at minimum pay attention. Like, as in, what's going on here? Like, is this like an outfit, or is this like a crazy person? Is there a police operation going down?
yeah.
I mean, it depends if that kind of thing is normalized. Like here, our police force isn't armed, so if we see the tactical response unit or the armed response unit here, it's unusual, and we see
Yeah,
police
very much
officers
so.
with guns, and it draws your eye. Like you go up north, you go to a lot of places on the continent, you go to the States, police are armed, and in some cases armed to the teeth, and it's not that unusual.
Actually, that I just a thought there. Actually, like, depending on your setting, allowing weapons into an area could actually be a big signal that this is an especially dodgy area, that the normal standards of civilization are not applying here, and you should be very wary. Because if you're openly carrying weapons in most settings, and the bells are just waving you in, like, that that's probably a red flag for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, they're checking to make sure you have weapons, as the joke goes.
Yeah. And then there's sort of a certain level of social awareness. Like, maybe certain people get to have their weapons and armor on display, but certain other people very much do not. You could very easily have big class divides or a sense of totalitarianism.
Yeah, this person's walking around with 4 bodyguards armed to the teeth.
Yeah, and it could send very different signals. Maybe the very fact that maybe you snuck into this party and you have a broadsword, maybe the first thing the partygoers think isn't, oh, how gauche, he has brought a weapon to our lovely party. Maybe what they think is, oh, that must be one of the Inquisitors. I should, big stiff back, saying, hello, everything's fine here.
I'm not a cultist.
Clamming up and not giving you info. Or maybe intimidating to giving you info, like rewarding people for sneaking a weapon in.
I guess the thing I wonder as well is, like, does encumbrance tie into this at all as well?
Oh, yeah.
Because in most games, as long as you're under whatever your regular carry limit is, you're fine. And that your regular carry limit is one around in play, armed to the teeth with a backpack. Now, I know myself. I've gone hiking with a rucksack, and I've gone hiking without a rucksack. And I have gone hiking where the first day is with a rucksack, and then I get to my hotel or hostel or whatever it is, and maybe I'm doing a circular that day, or there's a bus back to that same accommodation. I'm not bringing that backpack. Even if it is in my carry limit, I will slim down. Whereas, there's no real incentive to do that in most gaming systems. It's like I'm in under my carry limits, therefore I have absolutely every piece of kit that is allotted to me because there's no penalty for not having a lighter load, for
Yeah,
carrying the whole lot around.
I think maybe if we go back to our class example, what's the purpose of a lot of parties? There's the hobnobbing and there's the social interaction, and there's the chance to meet the host and all that. But the real point of parties is just to unwind and enjoy yourself. And your pile of stats that walks like a man doesn't need to unwind that hard for a lot of things, unless you're going to have a thing where going to the party and not bringing your weapons will allow you to clear 3 stress off your stress meter, or let you re-roll one of your insanity checks or something. The purpose of a party as a means of relaxation is sort of lost in a lot of context, and the players are probably not going to think of, well, this will just be a nice thing that my character likes to do. They're going to think of, okay, so we need to get the hand of the king and convince him of our cause, but also we need to avoid the duke. And I don't know, I feel like one of those random shapeshifting assassins may be here, so we'll have to bring our broadswords. People are not going to engage the party as a party. They're going to engage it as a narrative tool, and that's what's going to trigger the what do we need to bring, how do we defend ourselves, what social ammunition should we bring as well as our physical ammunition. So, that's another context that we need to consider when we're bringing in these social situations. Yeah.
I guess what I've seen of late in a few different games that I've been playing is that writers have kind of written in and kind of expected, okay, players should probably turn up in, new noble clothing and jewelry and all this kind of stuff. Or, they can get away with some stuff if they're part of a knightly order and it's their uniform or whatever. But if they don't, if they turn up in heavy armor, they have this role playing penalty. Or they might have this role playing penalty with people of this class and these, and put them in this box, and then there might be martial types who'd be like, yeah, whatever, fine, you're in play, I don't care. But it's a lot more of a subtle way of doing it rather than going for the straight ban, because it kind of goes, people can suss things out in advance and go, okay, you're turning up to this social event. People will generally be in ball gowns and stuff, and if you're turning up in plate, one, you'll be out of place, and people will be like, who's this Burke? I'm got to avoid them. Or it also shows a lack of faith to the host that you're not willing. So therefore, you're going to have these role playing penalties if you are in this stuff, and that way you're not saying a hard no, but you're kind of going probably for the best if you don't.
Yep. Consequences of the choices.
Now, those role playing penalties might mean that negative outcome that the players are expecting might be more likely. But hey, But I generally prefer the the nudge rather than the push.
Yeah, and it might just be appropriate for the GM to let players know of these, potential penalties ahead of time, in proportion to their in-character knowledge of what would be appropriate here.
Yeah.
Maybe you do
you're
want
probably
to
going to have somebody in your party who has a noble background or knowledge and ability or etiquette and ability or something that would give them a hint at this kind of stuff. And if not, you can always, they go to the tailor and they go, oh, you're going to that ball? Well, and they drop the hint, It's easy enough to work that stuff in.
Yeah, and maybe you do want to do a sort of fish out of water scenario where the players are this heavily armed band, in the corner, crowd around the punch bowl, trying to figure out why everyone hates them. Maybe you want to do that. it's going to depend on your vibe, but it is something you're going to have to think about ahead of time. Like what is the vibe you're going for here for this party, and what vibe should the party be expecting to be giving off? Because if they want to be respectable, you should probably tell them all the things that would make them unrespectable ahead of time that they might know. And of course, maybe time to do what's the heavily armed knight equivalent of Clear Out to the Straight Guy? Find an NPC to tell him, maybe you should do this, this, and this, and it'll work
Well,
out better.
if you've wondered how to hide a sword in a fancy dress, or maybe how to sword fight in a wedding dress, if you check out Jill Barup's YouTube channel, she's got a Tumblr as well. She has detailed examples on how to fight in a wedding dress, or how to hide a sword in a dress, or how to make a dress into a perfect murder dress. Like hiding blades and stuff in the ribbings of a corset, that kind of thing. It's fun. It's worth checking.
That sounds pretty good, actually. If your players want ideas, or that's one way to go. So, have we prepared enough for this topic? In any final thoughts?
Set the guards and the ragamuffins. these ne'er do wells coming in so heavily armed. Yep.
Well, may your parties be suitably attired.
Yeah, and of course, if you are going to the broadswords and full plate rave, don't show up in a fancy ball gown. But anyway, we have we'll be checking out future conventions and whether it's appropriate to come, full tactical gear with an AK-47.
A lot of cons actually do have rules about firearms and things that look like firearms and swords and stuff.
God.
So it is actually worth checking.
Makes sense. Yeah, it is.
Like you can't bring like even a dull sword. It needs to be obviously a big fake foamy yoke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the adventure party will be endeavoring to educate their listeners on what's appropriate for events coming up and what's appropriate for events in your game. But as always, the secret will probably be talking to your players and setting expectations as you go, and maybe think about it a little more, or let us do it for you, the Irish way. This has been the Adventuring Party, and this party's over.
Thank you for listening to the Adventuring Party. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can head on over to SpeakPipe and drop us a line. Or you can join us on our Discord server, where we keep the party going after hours. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, or Twitter, or you can email the hosts at party@theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license, but you probably knew that already. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and look forward to seeing you back here next week. Goodbye.